Hey, what's up? Happy Saturday and welcome to the channel. This time I'm trying something different. I had the idea to do little Saturday morning vlogs. Of course, it took me a little bit to get this set up, get it to where the light is just hitting my room the perfect way, and I am caffeinated enough with the help of some cafecito that I have here. This is my third cup now, and yeah, rather than spending a whole lot of time writing a script like I normally do for the podcast, I'm just going to be kind of going off, updating people a little bit more casually on what's going on. So I wanted to start off by saying that I have played about 100 hours of Harvestella so far, and it's a farming slash adventure RPG, kind of in the similar vein as Stardew Valley and Rune Factory. This has been a very unique experience. I feel like Harvestella holds such a niche space within the RPG realm. I definitely don't think it's a game that will get a sequel, as Square Enix recently announced that they had kind of given up on working a lot of the smaller projects, and I think this one constitutes one of those. Definitely a little bit more medium budget game, but I've just been so amazed by all the content that it has. Also on Blue Sky, I've been posting a lot of screen grabs and videos from the game, and I've just been surprised with like how many people reach out and tell me that they've also really enjoyed the game. So yeah, it's been such a little nugget of joy. Definitely a game that I wouldn't necessarily tell people to go out of their way to get, like I mentioned in the podcast, which by the way is Orcs in the Basement. We're on episode 7 where we talked about Harvestella for a little bit, and by we I mean just me. I don't know why I keep saying we. But eventually I'd like to have other people on the podcast, but for now it's mainly been me. And so last episode I really went in on what was then 60 hours into the game. I thought I was so close to the end. I thought once I get to chapter 6 I'll be done, but without any spoilers, I looked online and noticed that there's actually 9 chapters, so still some ways away. I think I'll be done by today, but I'm definitely not trying to rush through it. It's definitely a game I'm really enjoying. Definitely one of those cozy games, but it's a little bit more complex than I thought it would be. The fighting mechanics constitute a lot of like simplistic, just hitting the Y button over and over. There are like a variety of classes. I haven't fully wrapped my head around most of them, but they all seem pretty straightforward. I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely a weirder Square Enix game, but because of that, I think I find a lot of charm in it. But definitely, if you want to hear more about what my gameplay has been like, feel free to follow me at Orcs in the Basement. It's a podcast that should be available on most mediums. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and like RSS feed. So you can definitely check it out there. You could also go to Blue Sky and check out some of the links. You can find me at orcsinthebasement .bsky.social. So I've really been enjoying Blue Sky. I feel like it's been a piece of social media that I've just like allowed myself to fully engage in with some of my hobbies, and kind of started the community based on that, whereas like other platforms have been because of school or work. So I just feel like I can be more of my authentic self on there. So I really highly recommend it. Plus it's a great alternative to X, which is formerly known as Twitter, and it's such a toxic place. But I also respect that a lot of people still have to be in that space, just because a lot of what they build, a lot of the community they fostered over time has been on there. But I really recommend if you're someone who is thinking of trying something new and finding community elsewhere. Blue Sky has been really, really great. But anyway, I also have been waiting on Visions of Mana. So it's interesting because I ordered the CD mainly because I've been trying to budget a little bit better, and on top of like having the game physically being like great, if I eventually like it enough where I want to keep it, it's something I could also turn in to get other games, and I feel like that's been really helpful for me. Games are expensive, so having the ability to trade them in is definitely a plus. Because Xbox is the only console I have where I can have physical media. My PlayStation is all digital, and I've heard it's like not a game that's going to be available on the Switch just because it's like so ahead of what the Switch capacity can do. I'm really looking forward to playing it on the Xbox, which is interesting because Xbox doesn't really house a lot of RPGs, and even when I went to the GameStop, they said, because the Xbox like isn't really known for JRPGs, like chances of this game being in stocks are very low. So I ordered it online, and it should be coming. There's been a couple of times where it just gets canceled because it's so limited on copies, and then also it's the company that helped produce it, or I don't know the details of it, but the company closed down soon after release, which is just such a bummer. And I'm wondering if that like contributes to its rarity on an already scarce like platform. So regardless, I'm really excited to play it. There's a couple other games like the new Star Wars game, Star Wars Outlaws. I'm really excited to play. I know it's received some mixed reviews, but I'm just looking forward to a fun time. So I'm looking forward to playing that soon. I've played quite a bit from my backlog this year, and I've gotten pretty far. You can check out more of that. I go through every game I finish on the podcast. I think at this point I'm at number 11. So slowly but surely I've been trying to catch up with podcast episodes and talk about each game in depth if it's a game I enjoyed and finish to completion. Podcasting alone has been surprisingly fun just because I get a lot of creative freedom when it comes to each episode. I do have like the formula I do when it comes to each episode, having like just an intro, status on the backlog, some things in the news that have been of notice within like recent weeks that are topical and also very pertinent to the world of JRPGs. And then I'll go into a game that has recently come off my backlog more in depth, followed with like recommendations in the form of loot. But I've also been trying this more alternative, kind of creative, fun way to keep the podcast fresh. Like recently I had a letter towards my experiences first playing The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I talked a little bit of what that was like through the mind of like 9-year-old me growing up in Mexico and seeing this game played through the perspective of my brother, who surprisingly the first time I saw the game from beginning to end was when he flew in from Mexico City to visit us and just played it within the context of a couple of days and beat it. And for me, it was just like my first experience seeing someone play the Nintendo 64 and first time experiencing an action JRPG. It was a lot of fun, and there's definitely a lot of memorable moments. A few years later, my brother gave me the N64, and so I got many opportunities to play Ocarina of Time. It's probably the game I played the most in my life. I generally try to play it at least once every year, and it's always like so nostalgic. So definitely have nostalgic goggles when it comes to that game. So anyway, right now I'm also trying to balance those two. So sometimes more creative things that I try to do take a little bit more time just because I want to make sure that it's just off the wall enough, but also cohesive and within the span of like 30 minutes. So right now I'm working on something similar, which is going to be a love letter to Akira Toriyama, which, if you don't know, Dragon Ball and a lot of Akira Toriyama's work in general has been really well revered in Mexico, especially like in the late 90s, early 2000s when I was growing up in Rosarito. And not just Mexico, but it's just what I've found out is just so widely popular in a lot of Latin America. So I'm finding my niche when it comes to the podcasting and then just creating media in general, where I'm talking about identity, but also talking about like my love for hobbies like video games and anime. So, and through the lens of like all the intersections within my own identity. So it's been really, really cool, really fun. It's been a great learning opportunity, especially in this time when I don't have a big community here in Portland since I just moved here 2 years ago. So it's really been kind of that forced solitude has allowed me to dig in a little bit more into like who I am as a person, and dig in a little bit more retrospectively to the things that I love, especially after coming out of this recent pandemic and everything else that's been happening. I feel like the solitude in some ways was very like welcomed. It forced me to be a little bit more analytical as to some of my life choices and what I decide to do for myself or for people around me, knowing the difference. Hopefully it doesn't look like he stepped on the computer. And lastly, I'm really excited to go to the Retro Gaming Expo here in Portland, which is going to be this weekend. I got a little taste of it during Rose City Comic Con. They had their own kind of wing within the convention center and had a lot of retro games on display. It was a lot of fun. It was my first time playing the Virtual Boy and Sega, so it was a lot of fun. It was my first time experiencing either, and the first time I went to that section of the conference, there wasn't anybody there, so I really got a chance to test them out, particularly the Virtual Boy. And then the next day I went in and I wanted to check out the Sega, but it was just so busy. I really wanted to play Crazy Taxi, but alas, maybe I'll get more of a chance once Retro Gaming Expo comes in. I am volunteering, so hopefully that gives me the chance to meet a little bit more of the people organizing the event, maybe other people in the community who are into retro gaming. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I forgot to mention that I went as Senshi from Delicious in Dungeon, also known as Dungeon Meshi, and I was just thrilled with like the reception that I got. That was my first time cosplaying at any event, first time going to Comic-Con, and it was definitely one of the more memorable parts of living in Portland thus far. Really recommend it. So those are just some updates with what I've been doing recently. I took a couple weeks off from doing the podcast just because there's a few games that I'm getting really close to finishing for the podcast. I've also been playing like because I just really enjoy them. So I'm excited to talk about them a little bit more. Once again, that Orcs in the Basement, and you can listen to it anytime it's out, up to episode 7 if you haven't gotten the chance to check out any. So far, the most popular one has been the more non-conventional episode where I talk about Ocarina of Time and my experiences playing it when I was younger. But I have a few in the back burner that I've just like been piecing together, but mainly prioritizing finishing games for future episodes. So that's pretty much it right now. I'm almost done with Harvestella, and I'm really looking forward to some of the games I have in the queue. Like I mentioned, Visions of Mana is a game I'm really excited. Star Wars Outlaws. I'm also kind of tempted to play Dragon Quest Builders 2, which is accessible through the Game Pass. This is my last month with Game Pass. I canceled it, so I have until the 15th next month to play whatever games are on there. I don't want to keep paying for it, since it's like right now I'm like trying to work really hard on budgeting, and at least if I'm getting new games, I get them in physical form so I can then trade them in for more. So that's my plan. Also, if you have a game that you really want me to talk about, feel free to send it my way. That's be a really great incentive for me to play it and then talk about it either in the channel or on the podcast. So yeah, in general, this channel I tend to do a lot of like my learning, exploring different mediums. I've been doing a lot of let's play. Right now I'm working through Chrono Cross, which has been a lot of fun. Definitely has a lot of that crunchiness from like being a Generation 1 PlayStation game. I've also been playing Animal Crossing Wild World on the DS and been trying to stream that, and both games just have so much charm. I really love that era of old school graphics, and I think with like hyper realistic games that are coming out left and right, there's a lot to be said about the charm and just creativeness from like old school polygonal game. And with that, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to email me at orcsinthebasement@gmail.com to ask about the podcast, like what other games I'm like currently playing, what recommendations I might have. So I think that's everything I had in my notes for today. Here's a little doodle I did. Apparently that's me, but yeah, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to share more games on the channel in the future. And with that, cuídense. Bye.